I'd like to start with just giving a brief update on some of the activities of the ministry. You know, my approach with the Ministry of VSA is really one of empowerment of the staff and of the different departments. And so what I've done is I've really tried to ensure that the different departments have the freedom to do what they need to do. They don't really need my presence for all of these meetings. Obviously, we work together, we coordinate, and we brainstorm together, but I'm very proud of the work that's being done within the Ministry of VSA. To give you a couple examples, Labor Affairs, they're very much proactive. I know that there's been some discussions in the media about the Stars Casino and a dispute with some of the employees. The department is very much on top of that, and my understanding is that right now the employees have come to the department for advice, and they're in the process of seeking legal representation in order to help them to come to a conclusion with the management of Stars. You've noticed that the inspections department has been very active. They've adopted a zero tolerance policy. I've been in touch with Dr. Best. I'm happy with the direction that they're going. But I do think that it's important to remember that the inspections department, their job in a sense is to improve compliance, and of which inspections is one of the tools. But I think also that the ministry could certainly do a lot more in terms of communicating with the public what the expectations are. So what we've done over the past couple of days is we've created basically a top 10 list in terms of compliance, what's expected from different food serving establishments. So we've prepared a copy of that. I'll give a copy to the media. Alyssa, I think you have a copy that you can hand out. We will also give it to you digitally as well. But the idea is that if you want people to comply, I think that it's important that the ministry is clear in terms of what our expectations are, and also what measures the ministry will take depending on the severity of infractions. Collective preventive services, again, they're very much active, in particular in light of the Zika virus and potential risk to St. Martin. As you see in the newspapers already, they've had a multidisciplinary meeting, and that includes airport, SMMC, tourist bureau, vector control, and surveillance officers. And today they're having meetings on the French side, again, to give a coordinated French-Dutch approach. They are also in the process of developing a fogging schedule. We have a tentative schedule, but I'm still waiting for confirmation from them that it's a final schedule. So as soon as that's ready, that'll be released to the media as well. We expect that to be on a very short notice. In terms of our approach to Zika virus, and in particular, our focus is on the breeding grounds for mosquitoes. I'm very happy. You know, last week there was a lot of interest in the press release, and actually over my Facebook account, a lot of people commented. And I just want to give you one example. One of our citizens, Natasha Vanderpool, contacted me via Facebook and notified me that the house next to her house appears to be derelict. I guess it's been repossessed by the bank. There's no occupants in the house. So typical problem, the swimming pool not being properly maintained, about 2-3 feet of water in it, very clearly a mosquito breeding ground. So she contacted me, and I got the address, I got her telephone number, and actually on Sunday went to visit the house and actually to see for myself firsthand what had happened. And her impressions were absolutely correct, and actually she was very proactive. She had already taken kerosene, put it in the swimming pool, so actually at that time I didn't see any more breeding mosquitoes. I did give her some mosquito dunks, which I'll explain a little bit later what they are, but they're a biological tool that people can use for standing water that helps to eliminate breeding grounds for mosquitoes. So it reinforces the discussion that actually in the war against mosquitoes, in our war against the breeding ground for mosquitoes, it's actually the citizens that take the front line on this. So we have opened up our hotline. We've also have our website, our email address, surveillance@stmartingov.org, and also via Facebook. So the more information that you can give us, the more specific it is, the easier it is for the department to react. I had a couple emails, for example, that said, Sucker Garden's a problem, but that leaves such a wide area, it makes it much harder for the ministry to be proactive. But also, out of my visit and my discussions with Natasha, what became clear to me is also there's an area that we need to address, properties that are in default. So that means that we're in the process of drafting letters right now to lawyers, banks, real estate offices, and to notaries, that if they are currently managing properties that are not occupied, that they should take special attention to make sure that those properties are not becoming mosquito breeding grounds. As I mentioned to you, one of the things that I gave to Natasha are these. These are called mosquito dunks, and these are biological tools which can be used. They can put in the water, and it interferes with the breeding cycle, the reproduction cycle for mosquitoes. They last for 30 days. They're environmentally friendly. So it's something that citizens can just purchase instead of just waiting for the ministry to react. We encourage the citizens to become active themselves. And I do know that for sure these are available at ACE. We're starting conversations actually with different hardware stores to make sure that whatever products the ministry deems appropriate to use in the control of mosquito breeding grounds, to make sure that they are stocking up and selling them locally. The other topic that I wanted to touch on briefly is our progress with the St. Martin Medical Center. We have issued terms of reference to engineering companies to develop a bidding package for a turnkey hospital development. So we've made sure to include local engineering firms. So the companies that we have approached are Levense, Haskoning DHV, and Arcadis, and ICE. So we've made sure that we're engaging local engineering firms, and most of them are partnering with a larger firm that specializes in hospital construction. So we expect that their bids will be completed by the 19th of February, so that's coming up very quickly. And the idea is that they will develop the bidding package for what the hospital construction will be, and then we will try and select. We're already in the process of reaching out to potential turnkey hospital developers, and we will be looking at a design, build, and maintain proposal. And we believe that this makes sense because it makes sure that we have a fixed price, and I think that this will help to eliminate any cost overruns. And by, for example, including maintenance in the package, what it means is that whoever the developer is, that they have an incentive to make sure that the construction quality is good, because if the quality of the construction is poor, it will come back in increased maintenance costs for them later. So it's in their best interest to make sure that the quality of the construction is correct. We will also be asking that they provide financing options. So it will be up to the country to decide if they're going to engage those financing options. I was happy to read the newspaper today that Minister Plasterk is pleased with the direction that we're going with the hospital, and if we can get the cooperation or approval of the CFT, that Holland may even participate in offering financing for the hospital at favorable terms. So that's my update.
I received an invitation from Parliament to attend the Central Committee meeting to discuss the budget 2016 starting Monday at 10 a.m. The budget, as mentioned before, was submitted timely. I've also taken the necessary precautions to save time and to expedite things, to forward a copy of it to the CFT at this time, although they normally only get into the act after Parliament has approved the budget. but this will give them some advance time to look at the budget so that their advice could be expedited. The budget is lean and mean. Yet, I think the budget is realistic, and the major task as far as the budget is concerned will not be the meetings in Parliament that we're going to have, and once it's approved, I hope it's going to be approved, but the real task really comes thereafter, to make certain that everyone sticks to the budget and that they don't exceed their allotments. As the budget has been presented, there's a 20 million guilders that will be in reserve and hopefully will be there at the end of the budget cycle 2016, because that 20 million is already earmarked to be a payment that has to go to SZV and APS. As you know, we have to make good on the deficits from the past, and each year 20 million has to be paid down on that debt. So this way we're securing the amount that has to be paid in 2016 on the debts to APS and SZV. I've got good hope that in 2016 we will be able to generate extra revenues, which will give us, with a budget change, some room to maneuver. But you got to make it first before you can spend it. And right now, as the budget has been presented, that's the money we have. And if we want to spend more, we have to generate it first. You can't spend what you don't have. You have to get it first and then spend it. And that's the philosophy behind the budget. So I look forward to the discussions in Parliament as it relates to the budget. And steps are also being taken to make certain that expenditures are monitored monthly so that we can detect early if there have been any boundaries that have been passed as far as limitations in the budget.
For this morning, I have a few remarks. Besides meeting with Minister Plasterk yesterday on two occasions, one with the Council of Ministers, and then later on in the afternoon in a smaller setting with two other ministers, followed by the press briefing yesterday. I also met with the Council of Advice, basically a routine visit. We discussed issues such as the budget. They were brought up to, not brought up to speed, but we exchanged some views on the budget 2016. Of course, when the meeting was planned and the agenda was made, the budget had not yet been presented to Parliament, so the discussion there was not a lengthy one, which was the same with the discussions with Minister Plasterk. We also gave them an update on the electoral reform, specifically, or more importantly, on the issue as far as it pertains to changing of legislation. As you know, they are like on two tracks. There are things that we would need to change legislation, and there are issues that we can go about with making amendments to certain regulations and or policies, and we just need a decision of Parliament or a decision of the Council of Ministers on. But where we need a change in legislation, the Council of Advice would have to play a role as well. So they, just like was the case with the Council of State, would like to be informed as quickly as possible so that they can cooperate as much as they can in order to ensure that the legislation is dealt with urgently. One of the issues that comes up always, and I think the question had been raised here as well, is the concern that you need two-thirds majority to make certain changes. And my answer from day one has always been Parliament doesn't just have a two-thirds majority, Parliament has a three-thirds majority. If all members of Parliament support a legislation aimed at curbing ship jumping, then we have no problem, because it's not an issue of the coalition, it's not an issue of a party, it's not an issue of the government or a specific government, it's an issue that affects governance on St. Martin. The initiative was actually taken by the former government that used Article 59 to dissolve the Parliament, and their reasoning then was, we want to put an end to ship jumping. Interestingly, there is no proposal from them to that effect. There has never been any, other than saying because the government fell, because it lost its majority because of ship jumpers, then we will hold elections. If we do not adopt legislation, it would mean theoretically that every time a government loses a majority because of a shift in support for that government, we would then dissolve Parliament, have new elections, because we got to punish the ship jumpers. The proposals that are on the table are aimed at curbing that, making it difficult. Just before coming here, I read a commentary, for instance, in one of the papers, an opinion that said, it basically summarized with, let the members of Parliament freely move with their seat wherever they want. Let them jump ship every day if that's their desire. Just make sure that the government that is sworn in after the election stays there for 4 years. Now, it sounds like a very practical solution, but the authors of that proposal really then have no clue as to how government functions, because here the minister just gave an idea of the presentation of the budget 2016, but whether it's 2014, 15, or 16, if that budget, for instance, does not get the support of a majority in Parliament, because there are 15 freelancers, and if it doesn't get a support, the government can't function. If you do not have an approved budget, based on what are you going to make expenditures? Based on what are you going to pay rents if it was disapproved? Based on what are you going to pay salaries if that is torn down? Based on what are you going to pay subsidies? So the government needs support. So technically, yes, if you have 15 freelancers, free movers in Parliament, it sounds like a nice solution, but if you don't have support from a majority, you are gone the same way. So the government can't stay there for 4 years unless you are telling the government, well, you got to stay there until you find a majority. But as long as they don't find one, they cannot govern. So we have discussed the progress that is being made. With me in the meeting was my in-house legal advisor as well, who is the chairman of that committee, Mr. Lamani, and he gave them an update as to the progress they are making and the work they have done so far. I also, yesterday afternoon, had a brief visit with the Council of Advice, not Council of Advice, the Audit Chamber. Basically went upstairs, and it was a brief discussion, and needless to say that the team headed by Joan de Valemate, in terms of those in charge of the daily operations, were commended again for the extremely good work that they have done. One of the things that we should be proud of, both of our Council of Advice and our Audit Chamber, they were non-existent before 2010. But particularly the Audit Chamber, we have had zero experience basically on St. Martin. None of the persons who today form part of the daily operations of the Audit Chamber or who were appointed in the supervisory board of the Audit Chamber, none of them had had any experience in the former Netherlands Antilles. And as I told them yesterday, probably it worked well for St. Martin in the sense that we had no bad habits to bring along with us. St. Martin, as the new government, the new structure, country St. Martin, take it for wherever it is, we have inherited, whichever government would have been there from October 10, 2010, you have inherited the good, but also the bad and the ugly of the governments of Island Territory St. Martin. You've inherited the debt, you've inherited certain departments that didn't function well, you've inherited civil servants, those that were good, but also those that didn't function well. So you had the baggage of Island Territory St. Martin to take along with you, but the Audit Chamber, for one, was able to put together something from ground zero, structure it the way they would have wanted to, the way the vision was for it to be done. They were lucky to have a hard-working, very focused, dynamic person like Joan Dovalemate to head the daily operations, and I tip my hat to them for all the reports they have brought out so far. And if Parliament would make good use of the reports that they have prepared over the years, we will see improvement overall in governance and the control of governance in St. Martin. The dispute regulation, Minister Plasterk sent a proposal to all the governments and also to my person to take a look at. He alluded to that yesterday. Yes, indeed, that is the case, but I can tell you that we cannot agree with it because what it basically boils down to, there is a dispute within the kingdom between kingdom partners, and if it involves the Dutch government or the kingdom government, they have the last word. So if there is a dispute between St. Martin and the Dutch government or the kingdom government, and if, based on his proposal, we accept to agree that the Council of State would be the one in charge of rendering the advice for the Dutch government, it remains unadvised. It is not a binding advice, even though the minister says, well, we would need to have motivated reasons to deviate. We have seen in the past that if they do not agree, they will always find motivated reasons to deviate. So we do not see it, I for sure do not see it as a solution. All I see it is basically taking you for a nice ride around the park, but at the end of the day, we are in charge and what we say go. So if there is an advice from the Council of State that meets with their approval, then the Council of State did excellent work. If it does not meet with their approval, and we've had in recent history, we've had cases like that, when they have indicated in no uncertain terms the instructions given to the governors were not actually right and proper. And what do? They find a motivated reason to say, yes, but we don't agree with you. So it doesn't make sense to waste time on a dispute regulation, whether you put it by the courts, whether you put it by the European Court of Justice, whether you put it by the Council of State, whether you create a new advisory body, as long as the Dutch government does not agree that that dispute regulation, that dispute chamber can render an opinion that is binding on the two parties. It makes no sense to have a dispute between two parties and only one has to abide by the advice or by the decision of that body that renders the advice. This week, on Friday, I will continue visiting the different departments in my ministry. When we started some time ago, we visited, among others, the fire station. We've had good discussions. We've gathered excellent information. We visited the Department of Automation as well. We've been to facility management. And this week, Friday, we will continue the visit. And on my schedule this week is the Census Office and the Office of Personnel Affairs. The idea was to have the parking facility here in front of the Clem LaBega Square, the automated portion of it, up and running by the 1st of February. One of the things that I had announced back then, before I had traveled, was the many boulders that they had put there, to secure people from entering the parking lot illegally or leaving the parking lot illegally. I thought that we should not do that. The aesthetics, I was not in favor of. It did not look good. And we feel that we should begin enforcing our law. If right in front of the government building, right across from the police, if we have a public parking lot and we cannot make sure that people have that discipline to abide by the rules, the laws, and the regulations, then we have a problem. If we got to deface the parking lot to make it not possible for people to run over the edge of the parking lot to escape paying, then we are heading in the wrong direction. So those boulders have been removed, and the only glitch we still have is that if the parking lot, let's say, can accommodate 300 cars, because of the system, you should be able to read that at a given moment, the lot is full. So what happens if one drives, if you have 4 cars in queue and the first car becomes car 300, then you can possibly have 3, 4, 5 cars behind that car that want to get in but can't get in anymore because the parking lot is full. The way it is right now, you would need to back up one by one to get out. So we are breaking the curb by the entrance. When you're making that last turn to swing in, we're going to break the curb there to allow, if the parking lot is full, for the cars that are already in queue to exit. Once that is completed, then within very short, we will begin the operations and the use of the parking lot as it was designed to use. We hope to rely on the cooperation, of course, through this medium, but also through the media, to let the public know when it begins. Of course, we will have security officers stationed there at least for a day or two to alert people that there is a changed situation, that you no longer enter from where the entrance and the exit are right now, but that you enter in front of Windward Islands Bank, that you exit in front of what is now known as the old fire station, and you only exit making a right. You are not allowed to exit and make a left, and you are not allowed to enter making a left. You want to enter, it has to be from the right. When you exit only from the right, and we hope that will solve quite a bit of the traffic congestion that we experience all day, particularly during working.